We are through the first two games of the Stanley Cup Finals. What do we think after two games? Which players have stepped up so far and who needs to step up going forward? That's next on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We are available 7 days a week during the regular season and throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He is Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast, and together we're here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the Stanley Cup Finals. But of course, we have two games off, or two nights off, I should say, before Game 3. So we're going to be looking back on what we've seen so far through the first two games of the Stanley Cup Finals. And Shu, I think big picture standpoint, if you're the National Hockey League, you've got to love what we've seen from the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers so far through two games, two absolute thrillers, both ending up in overtime.
Frankly, this is far more than any of us could have anticipated. Listen, we knew going into this Stanley Cup final that this one was going to be a terrific Stanley Cup Finals. At this point in juncture, after two games, I don't even think terrific even is suffice, to adequately describe just how incredible these first two games have been. And now that we have two nights off, Saturday night and Sunday night before Game 3 on Monday in Sunrise, Florida, we have time to kind of process what we've seen through the first two games. And Eddie, let me tell you something. There's a lot of processing to do because this has been so far a Stanley Cup Finals for the ages, and we're only two games through.
Yeah, hopefully we see a lot more of what we've seen so far. And what we've seen so far is the Oilers winning Game 1, 4-3 in overtime. Leon Draisaitl, the hero of that one, with two goals, including the OT game winner. And then, of course, most recently, Game 2, the Panthers bouncing back after allowing that late goal in the third period to tie it. They win it 5-4 in double overtime, and Brad Marchand, the hero, with two goals, including the double overtime game winner. And speaking of overtime finishes, a little bit of history so far in this one. The 2025 Stanley Cup Final is the sixth final to require overtime for the first two games of the series. Now, the last three times involved our favorite teams, the LA Kings and the Boston Bruins. There were also 1951 and 1946. We're going to not really focus on those because that was a little bit before even my time. But in 2012, I remember who scored the overtime game winners. Fortunately for me, it was both for the LA Kings. Game 1 was Anze Kopitar, and Game 2 was Jeff Carter. That was against the New Jersey Devils, both games in New Jersey. In 2014, both games in New York against the Rangers, it was Justin Williams. I'm sorry, in LA. Justin Williams scored the Game 1 overtime game winner, and then it was Dustin Brown in double overtime in game number 2. I'll put you on the spot, Shu. In 2013, your Bruins taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. Game 1 went triple overtime. The Blackhawks won it, though. Any idea? Do you remember who scored the triple overtime game winner against your Bruins in Game 1?
Oh, man. I remember, man, this is a great question because for me, I remember it was Daniel Paille who scored the OT winner in game number 2.
Very nice. Good job.
So as far as Game 1 is concerned, that one, that's a tough one, but just give me a moment. I'm trying to recollect my memory here.
We only have 30 minutes. I can't give you a moment.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm rather slow here, but
think of a. It wasn't a star. It wasn't Patrick Kane. It wasn't John.
It was a defenseman. So
it wasn't. It was not a defenseman.
It was a forward. I'm sorry. So I am going to go on a rough shot, and I'm going to guess Andrew Shaw. What do I know?
No, you knew it. You couldn't have guessed that. Yes, it was Andrew Shaw. Gritty forward Andrew Shaw.
Can't stand him. That's why I was like.
It was Andrew Shaw.
Yes, Andrew Shaw. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask you just to start off here as we kind of look at this series through 2 games. Who do you think's been the better team so far? I mean, it's 1-1, so obviously each team's got to win. But overall, just looking at these 2 games, who do you think's been better overall?
That's a great question, and it's something that I actually was thinking about this morning as I was to be a little weird for a moment. I was doing my my morning routine, taking a shower, just thinking about the Stanley Cup Finals, because the first thought that came to me this morning when I woke up was, did we just witness what I think we witnessed in the first 2 games so far, where there really hasn't been any sort of passengers so far in terms of both teams? And thinking about which team has been the better team through these first 2 games so far, that's a tough one, because I thought Florida played pretty well last night, and I thought Edmonton played pretty well in game number 1 in delivering their statement in the OT winner. But if you're asking who played better so far in combined games 1 and 2, oh man, I really want to say Edmonton. I really want to say Edmonton, and there's 2 reasons why. Number 1, I thought that Stuart Skinner has been one of the big stories in this series. He may not get the big applause from the media and whatnot, and that's okay. But I was very much heavy on this point before the Cup final began. If Stuart Skinner plays anything close to how he has played through the first 3 rounds, he could be a big reason why the Edmonton Oilers win the Cup. He played well in game number 1. Game number 2, he was solid. He definitely played very well in the first overtime. Second overtime, he had to bail out the Edmonton Oilers a number of times before ultimately Brad Marchand said, "Hello, how you doing? Good night." And I think that Edmonton has definitely played better, but by a hair. I want to emphasize this by a hair, because Florida has certainly played its game through the first 2 games. Florida has not played bad. Like I said, there hasn't been passengers on either side, but by a small hair, it's definitely Edmonton, in my opinion.
I would think the Oilers as well. And if this is like a boxing match and I'm scoring each period like a round, I think Florida won periods 2 of each game, and I thought they won the double overtime. The rest of the periods, I think you could make an argument the Oilers were better in all those other periods. Now, maybe a couple of them were even. Maybe it would be an even round, like, say, the first period of game 2. But I think overall the Oilers have been a little bit better. But at the same time, maybe they should be a little bit better because they've had home ice through the first 2 games. Obviously, total goals. I shouldn't say obviously. Total goals so far are even. The Oilers have scored 8. The Panthers have scored 8. So pretty high scoring so far as the first 2 games. Shots on goal have favored the Oilers 92-74 through 2 games. Special teams, I think, has been interesting, because I think you would say, if you're Florida, stay out of the penalty box, right? Because that's more opportunities for McDavid and Draisaitl to be on the ice. And even if it's, we saw in game 2 examples of 4-on-4, that doesn't favor Florida either, because again, if you give Draisaitl and McDavid open ice, extra open ice to be out there, that's something you don't want to be in. However, if you look at the numbers, special teams have favored the Panthers so far. They're 2 for 6 on the power play, while Edmonton is 2 for 10. So they haven't been as effective. But I think if you're looking at so far in the series, I still think Florida, they've done a better job statistically on the power play. But we'll talk more about this on tomorrow's show when we look at going forward.
Yep.
I think staying out of the penalty box, though, is still a big key going forward for the Panthers.
And it's a massive key moving forward, because this is the series, if there has been, of course, the Stanley Cup Finals is the round where you need your key players to really step up outside of your stars. But it's never been more poignant and more important than it has been now. Because let me tell you something. You're not where you are without the guys like Corey Perry and Evander Kane for Edmonton. You're not where you are without guys like Luosterainen for Florida. You're not where you are without how big of an addition that Marchand and Seth Jones has been for this team, and as well as having a healthy Aaron Ekblad in lineup as well. So this is a series where you absolutely are getting the most and the best out of everyone who is seemingly healthy, with the exception of obviously Zach Hyman for Edmonton, who's out for this series.
As far as hits so far through 2 games, Florida has 111 to Edmonton's 90. I don't think that's not much of a surprise. I think Florida we thought would be a little bit more of the more physical team, and hit stats are what they are. Sometimes they tell the story, sometimes they don't. Face-offs, pretty interesting here. Florida has won 94 face-offs to Edmonton's 76, and that's with the Panthers being the road team in this, right? Where there's supposedly a little bit of an advantage for the home team in the face-off circle. So that has been an advantage for the Panthers so far, and you would think that'll be an even bigger advantage going to Sunrise for the next couple of games. Although I don't know if the Panthers may be all that happy about leaving the road, because they have been great so far this postseason away from home. 9 wins on the road for the Florida Panthers so far through the this Stanley Cup playoffs. And right now they are only 1 away from the all-time record, which is held by several different teams, including my LA Kings. It was 6 other teams, as a matter of fact, have won 10 road games in a single postseason, but the Panthers 1 win away from equaling that NHL record for most road wins in a single season. And the Oilers have been good at home, but the split so far through the first 2 games. All right, up next, we're going to focus on the Edmonton Oilers, what players have shown up through 2 games, maybe who hasn't yet. That's next on Locked On NHL Game Night. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, shopping online, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, through 2 games, let us focus on the Edmonton Oilers and what they've done so far. And you brought him up already, and we'll start with the goaltender in Stuart Skinner. He's allowed 8 goals on 74 shots faced so far. I know that he is a bit of a whipping boy for Oilers fans. I'm looking at it from the outside in, and I want to be respectful of what he's done. He's not a great goalie. I don't think anyone would argue that he's any kind of an elite goalie, but he's a battler. He's resilient. And to me, he's done the job that I think he's played about as well as you can play, I think, so far through this finals. I know some Oilers fans will be saying, I should have stopped that shot in overtime against Marchand. I mean, it's a breakaway against a guy who scored a lot of goals in the NHL. I think he's played well. I don't think he's let in any really bad goals. I think Stuart Skinner, if you're the Oilers, he's given you what he can give you so far.
He's definitely been someone that, if you're an Oilers fan, that you have to be very pleased with what you've seen so far. And something that I've alluded to before, that if you're going to complain or nitpick as to why the Oilers are going back to Sunrise Florida tied 1-1, Stuart Skinner is not the reason why, like, you were to like nitpick and say, he's done this bad or he's been solid. I think he's been tremendous in that for Edmonton. Now, through the first 2 games, what I will tell you is this. I want to really go deeper into the point that I was making in the first segment about your role players and your key contributors on this team being really important for Edmonton. I mentioned Corey Perry and I mentioned Evander Kane. But I want to mention something about Corey Perry for just a moment. Corey Perry is 40 years old. This man has been there and done that. Let me remind y'all, in case you all forgot, the last time he won the Stanley Cup was 2007 with the Anaheim Ducks. This is almost an entirely long lifetime ago. And not only just that, but it goes to show you how long he's been in the league. But the way that he's come up in big moments it cannot be enumerated in terms of his importance to the Edmonton Oilers, in terms of what he's brought forward. But in terms of Evander Kane, again, he's also had big moments as well. But I would even go as far as to say, if there is one player who I am absolutely waiting to see him have his ultimate moment in this cup final, is Kasperi Kapanen. And it's not to say that he's played bad. He hasn't. But he had his moment against Dallas. I want to see what he does in this final, especially after 2 games. Whereas you saw glimpses in terms of what he's been able to do and so forth. But man, when I tell you that for Edmonton, for me, Kasperi Kapanen, I want to see what he does in terms of when the series shifts to Florida beginning on Monday, because games 3 and 4 are in Florida. Monday for game 3, game 4 for Thursday. Kapanen is someone who I'm going to be paying very close attention to, because I know what I'm going to get from Evan Bouchard offensively. I'm not worried about that. With him out there, it's like you have a fourth forward. But Kapanen, I think he's certainly the ace in card for Edmonton.
Well, Connor McDavid obviously is going to have the spotlight on him, and he has so far, and he's earned it. 31 points so far in this postseason, which leads all players. As a matter of fact, historically, he's in some elite company. It is, the third time that he has had 30-point postseasons, and the only other people that have done that are Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. So that's pretty good. Also Edmonton Oilers as well, but Connor McDavid doing his thing as you would expect. But no goals for Connor McDavid. 5 assists, 2 power play assists to his right-hand man, Leon Draisaitl. I actually, if I could be shockingly critical of Connor McDavid, I think he needs to shoot the puck a little bit more. And it's not, I think it's because I think defenders are now playing the pass on him. And I think he needs to make sure he reminds them what kind of a goal-scoring threat he is. And I think that will open things up a little bit more. I think they're so fearful of the amazing passes that he can make, as we saw in game 2 with that incredible move and the pass to Draisaitl for a wide open goal. But I do think if he would shoot the puck a little bit more and make sure to remind not only the defense of the Panthers, but Sergei Bobrovsky, that I can still score, and you still need to play me honestly, because I think they're starting to overplay his passing. And again, I know it's shocking to kind of be critical a little bit of McDavid, but I think he needs to shoot the puck a little bit more just to make sure that Panthers respect his scoring ability.
I don't disagree with that, but what I will say is this: in terms of McDavid, and he has been he's become like the ultimate quarterback for the Oilers, if you will. I mean, McDavid, we all know his goal scoring prowess. We saw that incredible goal he scored in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals against Dallas. And to your point, there has to be a balance between being the distributor, the great passer that he is. No one doubts that. But then also showing everybody, hey, he is the great goal scorer that he is, but he also has to be selfish in that regard, and not be afraid to be more selfish, if you will, because I do think that there will come a point in time in this series, let's say maybe game 4, I'm just looking well down the well, if you will, that I think Florida defensively, they're going to tighten up, especially now that they're back home for the next 2 games. And I think Connor McDavid shooting the puck more and be more of a shot first type of player is going to be critical for Edmonton offensively.
Obviously, Leon Draisaitl is the beneficiary of his great passing. He's got 3 goals so far, 2 power play goals, and McDavid has set him up on both of them. He's got a game-winning goal, the overtime game winner as well. So certainly Leon is doing his part. And if you're looking at an early Conn Smythe Trophy finalist, I would think Draisaitl would be the guy at this point. The Oilers, McDavid is right there as well. One player I'm still waiting a little bit more for, and again, it's only been 2 games, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has had a great playoff so far. He didn't have a great regular season, but so far, no points in the first 2 games. He's a -2. So if there's somebody I would circle at this point we have not seen yet for the Oilers that needs to show up at some point, I would say Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is that guy for me.
I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is someone who has been a critical piece of this Edmonton Oilers core over the last several years. And I mean, this is someone who has shown up in the postseason before. But as I mentioned, at this Stanley Cup Finals, you need all of your role players to step up huge, even though you're not a star per se, but you need guys like, as you mentioned, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to step up hugely and contribute offensively. And I think he will, especially on the road. Whereas I think Edmonton certainly, even though they've been a better team at home, but I do think that they have had moments on the road where they have shown their ability to be able to weather the opposing team's storms on their home ice. So I do think that that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is definitely one that should step up. But I firmly believe, for me, Kasperi Kapanen, who had his moments against Dallas, but I definitely think in these finals, his importance is going to certainly loom large.
All right, so that was a look at the Edmonton Oilers. Up next, we will look at what players have been there so far for the Florida Panthers, maybe someone that needs to step up as well going forward. That's next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. All right, through the first two games, let's look at the Florida Panthers, and we will start, as we did with the Oilers, with the man in net, the man they call Bob. Sergei Bobrovsky so far for the Florida Panthers has allowed 8 goals, same number of goals as Stuart Skinner, but Bob has been the more busy of the two netminders. He's faced 92 shots so far in this series. There was only one goal, I would say, so far that I thought was a little bit of a soft goal. That was the Victor Arvidsson goal in game 1. There was a bit of a screen, but I thought that one was one that I think Bobrovsky would say I probably should have had that one. Otherwise, though, I think Bobrovsky has been very solid. I think both goaltenders so far, even though you look at the number of goals that have been scored, there have been a lot of goals scored. Mm-hmm. I think both goalies are still playing pretty well. I don't know that they're, but I will say going into the series, I thought Bobrovsky was certainly the better goaltender. The fact that it's, in my mind anyway, a pretty even battle between those two guys so far is advantage Edmonton. But I think Bobrovsky has played well so far in the first two.
No, he has. And I think Bobrovsky has been an anchor in that for Florida, like so far through the first couple of games, despite the fact that it felt like at times it has gotten a little wonky, so to speak. But for me, if you're talking about the Florida Panthers, the goaltending has been solid. But what has intrigued me about Bobrovsky is the fact that it seems like when Edmonton is able to plant that seed of doubt, they've been able to capitalize on that seed and make that seed grow even bigger. You saw it in game number 1, where Bobrovsky looked like he was absolutely rock solid in net through the first couple of periods. The third period and overtime was a whole different story for Bobrovsky. And in game number 2, I thought that even though at times Bobrovsky was solid, he was a little shaky in net, but at the same time, I do think that Bobrovsky can elevate his game to a whole nother level. Will he do it on home ice? That remains to be seen during these Stanley Cup Finals, but he's shown that he has the capability of doing exactly just that before, and that's something I'm going to be looking forward to seeing, especially in game number 3.
Well, a couple of guys have definitely stood up so far for Florida, Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett. Let's start with Marchand, who, of course, was the hero of game number 2. 3 goals so far in the series. He's got a shorthanded goal. He's got a power play goal. He's got an overtime game-winning goal. He's a +3 overall so far, and he's got 10 shots on goal, so he's been very active as well. And you talked about Corey Perry being a little bit of an older player. Brad Marchand is 37. He became the 4th oldest player in finals history with an overtime game-winning goal. The oldest player was Igor Liriana, 41 years old back in 2002 for the Red Wings. Steve Thomas was 39 years old back in 2003 when he scored an OT game winner. And Ron Francis was also 39 back in 2002. But Brad Marchand, a great game too. I don't know if you saw it, but making the social media rounds. His mom, I assume his whole family, but his mom and dad and family were in the stands. And Mama Marchand was talking some trash after her boy came through in game 2 to some of the Oiler fans there. They were having to kind of hold her back. So I think we know where Brad got his mouth from as far as him liking to chirp. Mom was chirping in the stands too, but Brad Marchand, again, we've talked about this before, obviously a guy you're very familiar with being a Bruins fan. He's been great so far. Everything you could have wanted in being that trade deadline pickup for the Florida Panthers at this point.
Oh, no, certainly no doubt about it, where Marchand has been, in my opinion, the biggest acquisition out of any team could have made at the trade deadline. And that's even including the Dallas getting Mikko Rantanen. I think Marchand has been even larger because we've seen Marchand perform on the big stage in the playoffs in his career. What we saw in game number 2 was really special. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whereas for me, my first memory of seeing Marchand really like have his big moments in a cup final was, of course, 2011. I talked about in last night's episode, game number 3, his performance in game number 3 against Vancouver with the Bruins being down 0-2 against the best team in hockey that year, and how he performed and how he performed the rest of the final, including game 7 of that cup final on clincher in Vancouver. And now seeing it 14 years later, another guy who has gone more than a decade without winning a cup. I talked about Corey Perry in the previous segment. Now Brad Marchand hasn't won a cup since 2011. We obviously know 2013 and 2019, which Bruin fans, we do not like talking about 2019, but that's neither here or there, in which that Marchand has had the knack of coming up big in big moments, and him fitting so perfectly into this Florida Panther locker room and lineup has been the spark that the Panthers needed, and he has given it to them in spades, which is part of the reason why what you're seeing from Marchand in these cup finals should absolutely not surprise anybody at all.
And Sam Bennett, also an early Conn Smythe Trophy candidate. He's leading the entire postseason in goals scored, 13. He's got 3 goals already in the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup final. Power play goal as well. So he's right there. He's been effective. And of course, he does what he does. He irritates the other team. He gets the other team's fans fired up as well. But he's one of the best in the business at doing all that. But being productive is obviously the most important thing. The defense for Florida obviously is very important to their offense as well. Seth Jones has a goal. Dmitry Kulikov has a goal. And Nate Schmidt has 4 assists from the back end so far for the Panthers. As far as somebody stepping up so far, there's actually a few of them for the Florida Panthers. For me, I know I've talked about Matthew Tkachuk. He's not healthy. I did think he was a little bit more effective in game 2, at least as far as making his presence felt. He was in front of the net a lot. He was screening the goalie, and that's something he can certainly do and do well. But there were a couple times where he had opportunities to put hits on players, and he pulled up, and that makes me think there's obviously something wrong with him where he feels like if he's going to be throwing the body around, maybe he re-injures himself. I don't know. But how about Alexander Barkov? Your reigning Selke Trophy winner is a -4 so far in the series with no points. So your captain, got to get more from him. I know he's on the ice a lot, and I know he's on the ice in all the crucial situations, but that's a little surprising that, again, the Selke Trophy winner this year is a -4, no points. Sam Reinhart also had that big breakaway opportunity in overtime and missed the net. He doesn't have any points either for the Florida Panthers. So a couple guys that we're waiting to see. We know they're talented. We know they're important parts of the team, but so far through 2 games have not been there on the scoreboard for the Panthers.
You know what's funny? I actually did have Alexander Barkov as someone who needed to step up huge for the Florida Panthers, and the reason was simple. It was for the fact that he has been invisible offensively this series. He just has, and there's no other way to sugarcoat it. And yes, that he is the current Selke Trophy winner, but at the same time, I just feel like with Barkov's caliber, he should be producing more, especially offensively. That yes, he's going to make plays offensively. I don't question that. That's not my concern. My concern is with the series now going to Florida and with the series potentially being longer. At what point do you say that, hey, you know what? We need to see more from Alexander Barkov, and it is something that that I personally can't help but to wonder, like, hey, like, at what point do we see Barkov like step up and during these cup finals? And I'm sure that he will have that moment that he will, perhaps like step up offensively, and I hope that it is fairly soon. But for me, it is surprising that Barkov has not produced so far during these cup finals.
I mean, he had that one moment where he did the stick check that kept the puck in the zone for Florida, and it led to a goal. So that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And then he was a little bit unlucky. He blocked the shot of Bouchard, and then it goes back to Bouchard, and he shot and he scored. So, but look, Alexander Barkov's a great player. If Florida is going to win the series, though, he's going to have to step it up a bit, and I'm sure he will because he's that good. One thing that's been really good so far about the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we knew that Zach Hyman was going to be out for the entirety of the postseason after his injury. So far, we haven't seen anybody get hurt. We've seen the same two lineups so far in games 1 and 2. We'll see what it is going forward, but there was an update. Aaron Ekblad, the defenseman for the Panthers, took a shot off his hand late in that game. Game 2 was in a lot of pain, but according to head coach Paul Maurice, he's completely healthy and will be ready to go in game 3 and beyond. All right, so that was a look at the Stanley Cup Finals through 2 games. Looking forward on tomorrow's show to talking about a preview of what we think will happen in game number 3 as the Stanley Cup Finals head to South Florida. Until then, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.